Good morning and welcome to the GovCon Playbook. So today we are going to be going over FMS, so foreign military sales. How do I get
Mhm.
some passport stamps and get paid for it? So first off, you're a big proponent of FMS,
Yeah,
and
100%.
I think a lot of military companies are. People maybe don't know that. So I want to kind of break that down. FMS, what is it? Kind of how do you get into it and that sort of thing. So I'll start with just what is FMS to you?
Yeah, I mean, so FMS, foreign military sales, is broad, but put it simply for me, it's any business I do with any foreign government that I'm selling something to them or providing a service. And this is going to be an ally, specifically an allied foreign government.
Okay. And then for you, so can you walk me through in what kind of detail? I don't know, but what was your first FMS contract?
First FMS contract was an event, actually, a meeting. I had to plan a meeting for, might have been an Egyptian Air Force group that they were buying. Was it the Egyptian Air Force? They were buying missiles, I think.
Okay.
That was the first deal I did. Was I arranged a meeting between them and our military to do the purchase and well, to support the purchase. They were doing technical meetings around some of the upgrades to the missile. So that was like my first one.
Gotcha. So how did you get in the room for that? Because for the FMS that I've been in, it's been like, yes, the US government, US military is going to be involved in some capacity, but
Hmm.
it was primarily Lockheed, Boeing, and
Yeah.
Raytheon who were in the
Yeah.
room, who were really selling the products. But the US
Yes.
has to give our stamp of approval to go, yeah, we'll allow you to sell that, right?
Hmm.
So do you have to have a relationship with Egypt first or with the US military first? Like, how do you bridge that?
Yeah, it could be either or. So the U.S. military obviously has, you have U.S. aid, which is money they're giving to the allies, and allies use that money to buy our stuff, our surplus stuff, sometimes active stuff, but a lot of surplus. Um, the relationship I had was with the U.S. military, and they had already been working with Egypt, and we got brought in just to be a support company. I will say now, though, I've learned how to develop my own relationships directly with the country. It's still a lot of it can be fostered by the U.S. actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's something called Gold Key service with the Department of Trade that can help you connect over there into whatever country you want to go to. Yeah, but that was my first relationship was U.S.
So it's something like that where it's an event. So you're setting up kind of these relationships, hosting, all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot that goes into events. I think it sounds simple and
Hmm.
it's not. So
Yeah.
I've been a part of some large events, and yeah, it is not easy. You got to get everything in place, get the meeting locations, and sometimes you're very constrained on where you can even meet because you're dealing with classified or semi-classified information. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
Have you done anything now that is swapped over from more of like an event side or kind of setting up the relationships to actually supplying the parts, the labor, the service, whatever it is, to a foreign country?
Yeah, finally, I've gotten to that spot. So the first country I went to, and actually was paid for by the U.S. government, was Ghana. To set up a deal there.
Oh.
Um, didn't end up doing that one. Ghana was not the easiest country to do business with. I won't go into it, but there's a can't you can't follow U.S. rules and laws sometimes when you work in Ghana. You
Yeah,
gotta pay people. You gotta you have to pay. You have to do things that are not appropriate.
yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I've actually gotten to another country, and they are actually have an official visit on the 23rd. We've already done our initial talks, and yeah, I'm able to. I found a way in through aviation, actually, through something I love doing, and so that led to bigger conversations, and yeah, so finally, but there's a company that kind of brought me into this. I've been watching them for years, and they did it. They started making parts for a missile, and that's how so they got in, and so that's where I'm at. I'm leveraging drones and aviation, so like support training and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah, finally.
Yeah. For smaller companies or people who have primarily been working for the US, because, when I think of government contracting, I think of, going and getting either a prime or a prime contract, something like that. Would you recommend companies to go, hey, go ahead and start start looking abroad, see what's out there? Or would you recommend no, get some contracts under your belt with the US first, kind of start there, and then you can start to look at maybe some other countries that need these type of services and things like that. What would be your approach if you were to redo it again?
You know what? The one thing you need to know as a defense contractor in the US is that the US is giving them money. You need to know that. Once you know that, you can go and support them. And it was funny. You always have more love, more support, more credibility overseas than you will here when it comes to doing business.
Hmm,
If you're a US company, you go OCONUS, which means outside the continental United States. When you go OCONUS, people treat you so much better. It's amazing.
interesting.
Yeah, man.
Huh.
It's easier to set meetings because the U.S. is seen as such a big war machine that when you come over to talk about defense, they're like, "Oh yeah, this company is amazing. Let's go forward." You know, so I would say go ahead and dive in. I mean, if you're foreign military sales, the beauty of it is that that country can write your company name on a piece of paper that goes to the State Department that says, "Hey, I want this company to represent us or to support this activity for us." And you literally you can go from zero to hero in in the stroke of a pen. It might take years to get
Hmm,
to the pen to stroke. But yeah, I just told another guy this yesterday. He was looking at getting into government contracting. I was like, bro, you got to go overseas. Stop worrying about the U.S. because everybody's worrying about the U.S.
hmm.
Go to other countries where it's still U.S. money being spent in some form or fashion. However, there are less sharks trying to eat in some of these waters. So yeah, 100%
Interesting.
would get out of the U.S. as fast as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like, I didn't even know that Ghana had a military, right? Like, these are things that
Yeah,
I've
they do.
personally never even thought about, that sort of thing. But,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that that's like most Americans, right? It's we are a little, I'm not gonna say we kinda look inward, let me put it that way. So,
Sure.
but with some of these contracts, I just wonder how would you even, because like, for contracts here in America, it makes sense. Like, I speak the language, I'm able to go, "Oh, yeah, I might know so and so at this place," or something like that, and it kinda gets the ball rolling versus I
Mhm.
don't know the first person in Ghana or, any of the, wherever the place is, Egypt or something like that. So,
Mhm.
how do you even start to find those opportunities overseas?
Oh man, best thing is gonna be your you can use GovWin and all that kind of stuff, sam.gov. You can start to look. However, you really got to get into their arenas, kind of where they're showing up. You can look at all the USAID spend. I'd start there. How much money are we giving these other countries? If we're giving these other countries, if you give a country, $4 billion over the course of 10 years, that's a good country to go start looking at selling. And then,
Hmm.
so you got to go where the spend is, basically. Wherever the money's being spent, that's where you
So the
go.
US so you can track where the US is spending government aid, and for
Yeah.
something like that, is it these countries who are buying it, or is basically like this weird feedback loop where the US is spending money on it and US companies support that country, so it just ends up back in the US anyway? Is that kind of how that system is
Yeah.
played?
It ends up back in the US, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it all ends up back here. That's the goal anyway, is to have it come back here. There's some foreign companies I've dealt with. Like there's a company out of Greece that shows up with a lot of missile stuff because they repair some of the launch systems for like Hawk and THAAD and stuff like that. So there
Yeah,
like there are some depot services companies that are overseas. They make some money, but they're not going to make what Lockheed makes or Raytheon makes or Northrop makes or anything
right.
like that or Sikorsky. I mean,
So it's almost
yeah.
that trickle down effect. It's like you have the US and their stuff, and then it kind of trickles down from there, but the trickle down can be quite lucrative. That's what I have figured out when you're dealing with these type of numbers in US defense. It's
Mhm.
like a couple drops is a lot to me.
Couple jobs is a lot. I mean, I've FMS has been 99.9% of the work I've done. It's
Really?
been
Okay.
yeah, in the government, yeah, man. I mean, we had a big contract with the Air Force that we're still working on. But I've done a lot of FMS and been all over the world, and it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. It's amazing.
So you're saying that like the process can be a lot simpler for SMS, but does that also mean that losing contracts can also be just as fast? Like I'm just curious what stability is there because I think that's what I hear with the government side. is everyone says, yeah, it's really hard to work for the US government, but once you're in, you're like locked in and you get that one big contract and then you're good to go, you know? And I've always wondered like how true is that, you know?
I don't know. I mean, for the most part, if you get a contract, it behooves everybody for you to keep the contract. So
Mm,
contractors not they don't want to have to go put it back out to bid. And then the
mm,
customer is upset because they're not getting the work done and that kind of stuff. The goal is to get it done. There are a few companies that I know one. Know of one that was just so bad that they were like, screw this. It was a small contract turning into a super massive contract that would have netted like just so much money. It was so much money. And it was the easiest work in the world. The highest level person on the contract was only getting paid $40 an hour.
yeah.
But the contract was worth probably 5,000 times 30. It was worth, I don't know, $100 million a year or something like that. Some stupid
Oh,
amount, $10
wow.
million a year. It's like $10 million a year, yeah. And
Yeah.
it was doing nothing. It was doing nothing. It was the easiest contract. Anybody could have done it. And yeah, they lost the contract. But for the most part, they want to keep you in your spot. Yeah. You don't want to shake it up because it's too much work to get on somebody new in.
So going back to like how you would acquire something like that, you said, track basically follow the money, right? Be the
Mhm.
detective, follow the money. With something like that, though, let's say I go, okay, I noticed that, we're spending, I don't know, let's just pick a country like, Bahrain. I noticed we just gave them, $1 billion in US aid.
Right.
How do you even start that conversation with Bahrain? Do you just fly over there and start like knock on the embassy door? Or I'm just curious, like, what would be your approach to go, hey, I know you guys have gotten money, or maybe you don't publicize that, but what services you're looking for? Offer XYZ, or you just go, hey, I know that you need support for this and this. I think we might be a good
Mhm.
fit. Let's talk. How do you find those type of people to even start that conversation?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, like I said, the US has a service called Gold Key that you can use it to meet companies and government in other countries. And Gold Key service is
Hmm.
pretty sweet. It works. Um, and then some states have what's called a step grant, which allows you to pursue it doing business overseas, exporting your business to another country. So that kind of gets you over there. And then the question is who do you know or who do you need to know? You're gonna want to start with really it's different for every country, but if military is ultimately where you want to do it, you're gonna want to meet, questions, hey, how do I meet this general or that general? So your research has to be pretty incredible,
Hmm.
but you can always go to the embassy. So whatever the foreign country's embassy is here, that's a good place to
Hmm.
start. So if you want to work at Bahrain and if Bahrain has the embassy in the US, that's a good place to go get your first set of meetings. That's a good,
Okay.
really good place to start.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So my meetings in Ghana started with the Ghana embassy in the US.
With something like that, do you end up flying to Ghana and you like
Oh
got to
yeah.
meet everyone there and like
Oh
touch
yeah.
those? Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the secret
Yeah.
about FMS is you got to go there. And if you're gonna
Okay.
keep doing business, you gotta stay there. You gotta have somebody there. But yeah, you're not gonna be able to
Okay.
just sit in the US and pretend like it's all golden and no, you gotta go. And I went to one country and they were like, listen, the only reason we were doing this with you is because you actually showed up. Most people do
Hmm.
not show up. They just email and email and email and email and email and nothing happens. So yeah, you gotta show up.
For the paper trail on something like this, or not necessarily paper trail, but like, is there a ton of government? Because this would just seem like a admin nightmare to me doing business outside the US with like all the different like all the
No,
different
it's not
paperwork involved. Is that true or is it just as easy?
It's it's just as easy. I
Really?
mean, you only have to worry about when you start to get into ITAR, export control stuff, classified stuff. You only have to worry about it, when State Department tells you to worry about it. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward. There's some rules, yeah, but it's not. I mean, you might want to sell uniform T-shirts to a foreign military, undershirts. You know what I mean? That's not export control. That's not special. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. So yeah, there's not a lot. It could be as simple as you want it to be.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
guess from my experience with it, it was a lot, but I guess for me, dealing with like missile systems, those are just
Right, it's a
so
lot.
heavily regulated.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're getting an FFL, right now, a firearms license, federal firearms license right now. And we don't want to go sell weapons to a foreign country, but we want to show that we have the ability to make missiles so that the license that we're getting allows us to manufacture destructive equipment.
okay.
Well, that the license is a lot of paperwork, but it's not daunting. It's not any more than what we're already doing, I guess. I mean, a couple more steps, but I tell people this with government contracting: you got to love paperwork, anyways. There's no amount of paperwork that should
Mm,
scare you,
yeah.
because your money is directly tied to paperwork. It's not. People say it's
Yeah.
tied to performance, but in reality, if you can perform all day, but if you don't do the paperwork, then you can't get paid. You can't prove you did the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who've done missile tests. They went well. It was amazing, and then they didn't want to do the paperwork,
Mm,
all the technical reporting and all this and all that. And, you can sink a deal just on paperwork. So I love paperwork
yeah. Yeah. You just got to roll up your sleeves at that point. So, I mean, it's like, if
pretty much.
that's the nature of the game, right? If you
Yeah.
can't get into it, then maybe not the career for you.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, awesome. I'm very interested to see kind of how the FMS stuff goes, especially with all the global conflicts and all that sort of stuff. I think we're going to see it more and more. It's going to be
It's
interesting
already
to see
starting.
too, just yeah, for sure. And I think this is a lot of stuff that like we've known for a while. Like I don't think the average US citizen realizes how profitable the US military is
Mhm.
because all we hear about is oh we spend all of this money on government contracting, on defense, on this sort of stuff, right? But in reality, yes, we do. However, half the world ends up buying it, right? And when we upgrade to something new, 9 times out of 10, we're liquidating all the old stuff on a premium
Mhm.
to then just go and
Oh,
replace
yeah.
it. So now the average citizen in the US, I don't think is really necessarily always feeling those benefits.
Right.
But the US is military is it generates a ton of income from all this sort of stuff. You just might not hear about it or see it because it's not like, an iPhone where it's like, oh yeah, we all know what an iPhone is, how it's sold, the new one that's coming out, all that sort of stuff. You don't necessarily hear about
Uh-huh.
that with weapon systems that are, if not millions, billions of dollars, right? And being
Right.
sold all over the place. Again, to places that a lot of times the average US citizen doesn't even know exists, right? And it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
they
100%.
bought, $50 million worth of US products. And it's like, they absolutely did. And that's why I tell people I think US the US economy is really just weapons manufacturing and entertainment. Those are really our 2 biggest exports. So, there might be some and maybe
I'd say
tech,
so.
but
Yeah.
if you look
Our
at,
tech ain't
like
that great compared to what's around the world. I mean, we got good tech,
yeah,
but there's amazing tech globally. Yeah. Korea has
right.
amazing tech.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's obviously and again, like, if you look globally, Apple is not that big. Not everyone has an iPhone, in
Yeah.
in the UK and in France and all that sort of stuff. If you look at, global markets, like you're saying, you're gonna see Korean phones, you're gonna see Japanese phones, you're gonna see, some American phones, but for the most part, it's extremely diverse. I think
Mhm.
America is definitely the most centric on some of those type of consumer products. But as far as military goes, it's extremely heavily swayed US, I would say. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, you got U.S., you got France, China, and Russia. They're going to be the biggest players, but U.S. is going to stand out on all those. I mean, uh, by far, by a huge margin, you're going to see a lot of U.S. stuff. Second is definitely Russia. You see a lot of Russian stuff out there, but any developed country, allied country, U.S. Lots and lots of U.S. stuff. Yeah.
well, and two, a lot of it is they can't buy. I mean, I've seen the movie, what is it, War Dogs, and it's got the 2 guys who started, kind of government contracting, and they ended up, buying and selling, kind of like a Lord of War type of thing. And I'm sure the movie's a little bit dramatic, but it's based on a true story. And
Hmm.
I mean, that was their basically downfall was they tried to broker a deal and getting old Russian equipment and selling it via US contracts. And that was a huge no-no. And they tried to kind of skirt it. and that sort of thing. And it's like kind of like what you were saying, you better be good about the paperwork and knowing to cross your T's and dot your I's. So yeah,
Yeah, bro. It's a different that movie. I've gotten more questions in my about my career than ever when that movie came out. Because people were like, "That what you do?" I was like, "Well, no, it's not what I do at all." Would I do it? Sure, if it was a way to do it efficiently and not kill me, get killed doing it. But yeah, you can't break the rules. You can't break the rules. That is what it is, and a lot of people will break the rules. But yeah, there's enough that you can do the right way in FMS to make insane money. You don't have to do it the wrong way.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, hopefully this opens up the conversation for a lot of people to start like looking into it, into the gold key services, those sort of things, and even like expand
Yeah,
into just talking about FMS. We have been because I've had several companies here in town who have said, yeah, like we've done government contracting. We're looking for other verticals and that sort of thing. And I would be like, at this point, say like, hey, have you ever thought about FMS? Like, what does that look like for
yeah.
you? Have you ever thought about how you could support another country, something like that? There might be opportunity there. I think it's definitely
Dude,
worth
there are
exposing
a
people
lot of
to.
companies. Yeah, bro, there's a lot of companies that could probably serve in that space. Like firing systems for missiles, they break all the time. They need that, and a lot in some other countries. Anybody who ever bought a missile system from the U.S. Has probably needs help on firing systems, repairing them, replacing parts. You name it. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff. Stop thinking about the U.S. That's the issue. Everybody thinks I can do business here in America. Do it everywhere else. You'll make more money, and you'll make a lot of great friends too.
Well, I was just going to end with companies out there. If you're a viewer, we appreciate you watching. If you have any questions about this, drop a comment or ask us if you have any questions about FMS, and we'd love to answer it. So I'd love to do some Q&A stuff on this. So if anyone has any questions or anything like that, wants to participate, let me know. So shoot me a message or drop a comment below.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. See you, Randall.
See you, man.